The lobby of the Calloway Strand building had marble underfoot that had cost more than most people's houses, and in 11 years, nobody had ever looked at it the way the man kneeling near the east elevator bank was looking at it now. He wasn't polishing it, he wasn't measuring it exactly. He had 2 fingers pressed flat against a grout seam, head tilted at an angle that reminded Vivian Calloway of a doctor reading an X-ray he didn't like. She watched him from across the lobby, from the vantage point she'd occupied every morning for the last year and a half, low, level with the reception desk, a spot she used to walk past without a second thought and now navigated by wheel. "You're the technician," she said, not a question. He stood. He was taller than the work order photo had suggested, though maybe it wasn't height. Maybe it was the way he didn't flinch when she rolled closer, the way he kept looking at the floor instead of doing the thing everyone else in this lobby did, the quick downward glance, the recalibration, the 3 seconds, sometimes 2, it took people's faces to reorganize themselves around the chair. He didn't do it. Not in 3 seconds, not in 10. "Eli Marsh," he said, wiping his palm before offering it. "Handyman's on the invoice, but that's not really the job." What is the job, exactly? Right now, figuring out why your grout lines are cracking in a diagonal nobody installed them to crack in. Behind him, near the revolving doors, a girl of about 8 sat cross-legged on the marble with a backpack in her lap, paging through a book with a foil-stamped comet on the cover, entirely unbothered by the fact that she was sitting in the lobby of a $2 billion investment firm. "Yours?" Vivian asked. "Every weekday until 3:15, Eli said, like it was simply a fact of the world, the way gravity was a fact of the world. Vivian looked back down at the grout line. She had rolled over that exact seam 4 times already that morning and hadn't seen anything but stone. She would learn over the next 11 days that this was the story of her entire building and possibly her entire company. Not that something was broken, that something had been broken carefully enough that nobody was supposed to notice until it was too late to matter. Vivian Calloway had built Calloway Strand Capital out of a 2-person consulting shop and a folding table in 2015. By the time she was 41, it managed just under $2 billion across a dozen mid-market portfolio companies, and she had done it through a divorce, a miscarriage she'd told exactly 4 people about, and a founding partner named Preston Guilfoyle who'd tried to quietly reroute the firm's original seed fund into a shell entity registered under a name 1 letter off from her own. She had survived Preston. She had not, in the same clean way, survived the accident. 19 months ago, on a Tuesday she could still describe in exact, unwanted detail, an uninsured driver ran a light on Correll Avenue and hit the passenger side of her car doing 41 miles an hour. The insurance settlement didn't come close to covering the 2 surgeries, the 11 weeks of inpatient rehab, and the specialist in Denver who told her, gently, professionally, the way people deliver news they've delivered 1,000 times before, that the damage to her lower spine wasn't the kind that reversed. She used a power chair now, custom-built, dark gray, responsive enough that it sometimes felt like an extension of intention rather than a machine she operated. She'd had it serviced twice. She knew every ramp in this building that was a ½ degree too steep, knew which elevator door closed just slightly faster than the others, knew, with the precision of someone who'd been forced to learn it, every physical flaw in a space she used to walk through without thinking. What she hadn't learned in 19 months was how to stop clocking the moment people noticed the chair. She'd started timing it without meaning to. The look, the recalculation, the tiny involuntary adjustment in how someone spoke to her afterward, slower or louder or performatively careful, as if competence were something that had rolled out of her along with the mobility. Eli Marsh hadn't done any of it. She told herself that was a small thing. She told herself that for about 4 more days, until it stopped being true. "Your substrate's shifting under the East Bay," the second time she wheeled over.
This time because she'd been watching him from her glass-walled office for 20 minutes and curiosity had finally beaten out the 6 other things on her calendar. The crack pattern's diagonal, which means it's not surface wear. Something underneath is settling unevenly. Settling into what? That's what I need to find out, but I'll tell you this for free. Whoever signed off on this installation knew the subfloor wasn't ready for it. You don't get a crack like this from age. You get it from somebody skipping a step to hit a deadline. Vivian looked at the marble the way she hadn't looked at it in years, not as a finished thing, but as a system, layers stacked on layers, each one supposedly certified before the next went down. How long have you been doing this kind of work? Structural repair? 12 years. Before that, I was a civil engineer. He said it flatly, without the small pause people usually left for her to be impressed. The work order estimated 3 days. Vivian didn't know yet, wouldn't know for another 6 hours, that it was about to become 11. What she did know, watching him work, was that he'd spent 45 full seconds with his attention on that grout line before he so much as glanced at her chair. She counted. She counted these things now, like other people counted calories or steps, an involuntary tally she'd built out of self-defense and never managed to put down. 45 seconds. Most people managed 3. "There's more," Eli said, standing, brushing dust off his knees. "I want to pull up a section near the elevator bay before I commit to a repair plan. If the subfloor's compromised there, too, we're not talking about a cosmetic fix anymore." "How much more?" "I won't know until I look, but I'd rather tell you it's bigger than it needs to be than tell you it's smaller than it is." Vivian sat with that sentence longer than she meant to. It was, she realized, the first completely unhedged thing anyone in this building had said to her in 19 months. She authorized the additional work that afternoon. She had no idea yet, that wouldn't know for another 6 hours, that she'd just authorized someone to start pulling on a thread that led directly to the man who ran her operations department.
By the 4th day, the girl in the lobby had a name, Wren, and a settled routine that involved the same corner near the potted fig tree, the same backpack, and the rotating stack of astronomy books that she discussed with anyone who made the mistake of pausing near her. "Most people think Jupiter is the biggest deal in the solar system," she informed Vivian on day 5, without any preamble. "But Io has more active volcanoes than anywhere else we found. Nobody talks about Io." "I didn't know that," Vivian said. "Most people don't." Wren turned a page like the matter was closed. "Your chair is cool. My dad says the motor's got good torque. He says torque's the thing that actually matters, not top speed." Vivian looked down at her chair, which she had never once considered from the standpoint of torque. "Your dad knows a lot about how things work." "He knows how everything works," Wren said with the total, unshakable conviction of an 8-year-old who had simply never been given a reason to doubt it. "He fixed our garbage disposal with a butter knife and half a paperclip. My mom used to say he could talk to machines." Then, quieter, looking back down at Io and its volcanoes, "She doesn't really say that anymore." Vivian didn't ask why. She didn't have to. Used to was doing enough work in that sentence to answer the question on its own. She went back to her office and sat by the window for longer than she'd planned to, thinking about what it meant to be able to put your hands on a broken ding and know immediately what it happened to, and when, and if you looked closely enough, by whom. She wondered, not for the first time since the accident, whether people worked the same way, whether if you pressed on the right seam, the whole shape of someone would reveal itself, the way Eli had reached under her lobby floor and found 19 months of small, careful damage nobody else had thought to check for. She didn't know yet that she was about to find out, and that the seam she needed to press on wasn't in the marble at all. It was 3 floors up, in an office with her own company's name on the door. What Eli found under the elevator bay on day 6 changed the job from a repair into something closer to an investigation.
The subfloor, once opened, showed a compressive strength well below what the original specs called for. The drainage channels ran at the wrong pitch, and the elevator pit itself, the poured concrete housing for the hydraulic mechanism, had been built 4 inches narrower than code required on its western wall. 4 inches doesn't sound like much, Vivian said when he laid it out for her in her office that evening, in the plain, unhurried language he seemed to default to whenever the stakes went up rather than down. It's enough to make the lift work. It's not enough to make it work safely for the long term. Tolerances like that don't fail on day one. They fail after enough cycles, enough weight, enough heat, enough years. Who approved the contractor? Vivian already knew the answer before she finished asking. My COO, Dean. He's been with the firm 6 years. He vetted the contractor himself, Ashford Construction, said he'd used them before, that the bid was competitive, the timeline was fast. She heard herself explaining Dean to a man she'd known for 6 days, and noticed, not for the first time, that she was doing it the way people explain someone they're trying to talk themselves back into trusting. You don't have to explain him to me, Eli said. I know. She did anyway, mostly to herself. She'd been in Denver for a follow-up consultation when the Ashford contract was signed. She'd approved it over the phone because she'd trusted Bean, and she trusted Dean because 6 years ago, when Preston Guilfoyle tried to gut the firm's seed fund, Dean was the one who quietly flagged the discrepancy that let her catch it in time. Or she'd believed that's what happened. She was starting to, for the first time, wonder whether belief and fact had ever actually lined up on that particular story. If the hydraulic seal failed under normal load, what happens to the cab? Pressure drop. It falls until the safety catch engages. He didn't finish the next part of the sentence, and she found she didn't need him to. She rode that elevator every single day.
Vivian had her outside counsel pull the full Ashford construction file that same night. Every addendum, every change order, every signature page, and she read it in the apartment she'd retrofitted after the accident, a glass of water going warm on the table beside her. Page 14, subsection 5 was where she found it, a clause quietly rerouting all warranty disputes and structural liability claims to a private arbitration firm in Reno called Hallbrook Dispute Resolution. She looked it up. It had been registered 9 months before the Ashford contract was signed. Its filing agent was a name she didn't recognize. Its listed correspondence address was a mail forwarding storefront in a Reno strip mall, and the entity that leased that mailbox, according to the forwarding service's own public registration, was a holding company called Foss Whitlock LLC. Foss. Dean Foss. She sat with that for a long time, the water untouched, the apartment very quiet. It wasn't just that her COO had hired a contractor willing to cut corners on a load-bearing structure. He had built the legal scaffolding in advance to make sure that if the corners were ever discovered, the liability would vanish into an arbitration process her own legal team would need years to untangle, and the elevator would go on, running unsafe until it wasn't. She thought about the pressure drop, about the safety catch that should engage, in theory, in a pit that had been built 4 inches out of spec. She called her attorney at 11:40 that night. He picked up because she paid him a retainer specifically so that he would. Don't confront him, her attorney said, once she'd walked him through it. Don't change anything about how you're operating. Let me make some calls in the morning. I know how to wait, Vivian said. I've had a lot of practice. She hung up and looked at the reflection of her own building in the dark window glass. The building Dean Foss had helped her run for 6 years. The building he had, apparently, also been quietly preparing to inherit the wreckage of. She had no idea yet that Foss Whitlock LLC connected to something much larger than a bad contractor. That discovery was still 2 days away. Dean Foss came to inspect the site on day 7, and he came the way Dean always entered rooms he intended to own. Jacket buttoned, smile preloaded, a handshake calibrated to establish something rather than greet someone.
"Marsh," he said to Eli, extending a hand that Eli, mid-repair and covered in grout dust, shook anyway. "Dean Foss, COO, just wanted to check on progress, make sure we're tracking to schedule." "You're not," Eli said. Dean's smile didn't move exactly, but something behind it did. The scopes expanded, the subfloor issues run further than the original section, and the elevator pit's out of code on the western wall, which means I need to pull a permit before I go any further. That means an inspector comes through. "An inspector," Dean repeated. "Standard procedure. Once you find a code violation in a load-bearing structure, you document it and you pull a permit. Otherwise, the liability's on the building owner and on you, if you signed off on the original work." Eli glanced at Vivian. "You'd want that protection either way." "Of course," Vivian said, watching Dean's face with an attention she'd once reserved for reading spreadsheets. "Of course," Dean echoed, and his voice held perfectly steady, and his eyes went somewhere else entirely for just under 2 seconds. She would have caught it 8 months ago, before the accident, before 19 months of learning to read the small, involuntary things people's faces did when they thought no one was measuring them. She would have missed it completely. But she'd had a lot of practice lately, cataloging the gap between what people said and what their faces did while they said it. Dean left 20 minutes later, citing a call. Vivian sat by her window and thought about the word inspector, and about the 2 seconds where Dean Foss's composure gone somewhere she couldn't follow. She had a feeling, not proof yet, but the kind of feeling that had never once been wrong in 11 years of running this firm, that the inspector Eli was about to bring in was going to find a lot more than a narrow elevator pit.
On day 9, Eli knocked on the frame of Vivian's open office door and set his phone on her desk, screen up, a photo already loaded. It was a close-up of a junction box deep in the elevator pit, where a conduit housing the hydraulic pressure sensor ran along the wall. Vivian looked at it for a moment before she found the word she wanted. "It's bent," she said. "Persuaded," Eli corrected gently. "Bent just enough that the sensor will read pressure incorrectly over time. Not immediately, not obviously, but enough that eventually it stops reporting an accurate number. That's not deterioration from the original build. Someone did that recently, after my crew had already opened this pit." "How recently?" "The kind of recently that means someone came in during a maintenance window when the elevator cameras were already down for scheduled service, and knew exactly which conduit to touch." Vivian didn't have to check the maintenance calendar. She'd approved that window herself, 6 days ago, at Dean's request. She pulled up the building's badge access log without a word, and turned her monitor so Eli could see it. He read the entry for last Thursday evening in silence. He didn't say the name out loud. He didn't have to. "You already suspected this," he said finally. "I knew enough to be careful," she said. "I didn't know enough to be certain. Now I think I might." "What are you going to do?" She thought about Preston Guilfoyle years ago and how she'd handled him quietly through lawyers and documentation and the slow, unglamorous machinery of due process, while he told anyone who'd listen that she'd pushed him out. She had won that fight completely. It had also cost her 2 years, and something she'd never quite found the language to name. "I'm not going to do anything that gives him grounds to say I acted improperly," she said. "I'm going to let people whose actual job this is do it properly. Can you document what you just showed me? Formally, date, location, exactly what you observed." "Already drafting it," Eli said. She looked up at him, standing in the middle of her firm's entire downtown skyline behind him, looking, she thought, entirely unbothered by the size of what he'd just handed her. "Why civil engineering, originally?" she asked, which was not the question she'd meant to ask. "My father built houses. He used to walk me through job sites and tell me which ones would still be standing in 50 years and which ones would start cracking in 7. I wanted to understand the difference." "What made you leave it?" He considered that.
"Same reason I'm good at finding what somebody else tried to hide," he said, and didn't elaborate, and she decided not to push. Not yet. The call from her attorney came the next afternoon, while Vivian was reviewing a Q3 report she wasn't really reading. Foss Whitlark LLC has a stake in something called Concord Ridge Partners. Small position, filed quietly, structured to stay under disclosure thresholds. Concord's been accumulating secondary market shares in 4 of Calloway Strand's portfolio companies over the last 16 months. Not controlling stakes, just enough. Enough for what? Enough that if Calloway Strand had a serious incident, a structural failure at headquarters, say, or a sudden leadership transition that spooked your institutional investors, Concord would be positioned to move fast and buy the resulting discount. Dean's been quietly building a second firm, using yours as scaffolding. The arbitration clause in the Ashford contract was the last piece of the structure. If that elevator failed, the claim goes to Halbrook. Halbrook stalls it for years, and somewhere in there, Dean starts suggesting the board consider new leadership. Someone more, say it, someone without the visibility issues that come with a long recovery. Vivian set down her pen. Outside her glass wall, she could see Wren at the reception desk, mid-explanation about something involving Saturn's rings, both hands moving, the receptionist actually laughing now, actually leaning in the way people did when someone told them something true that they hadn't known they wanted to hear. "File it with the DA's office," she said, "and call the SEC. He's been trading on material non-public information about my own portfolio companies to build Concord's position. That's not the elevator anymore. That's federal. You understand, once this moves, it moves fast." "Good," she said. "It's been slow for 19 months. I'd like something to finally move fast." She hadn't told Eli any of this yet. Not the shell company, not Concord, not the shape of what her own COO had spent over a year quietly constructing underneath her feet, in the exact literal sense of the phrase. She wasn't entirely sure why she was holding it back, except that she'd learned, since the accident, to be careful about who she let inside the radius of things that could still hurt her. She'd built walls that were efficient and nearly invisible, and extremely good at their job. She was also aware, in the same clear-eyed way she was aware of most uncomfortable truths lately, that walls didn't actually distinguish between a threat and someone who simply deserved to be let in. She hadn't decided yet which one Eli Marsh was. She was starting to suspect she already knew.
Dean Foss was arrested on a Wednesday, and it was nothing like the version of it that would have played in a film. No raised voices, no dramatic reveal. 2 agents from the SEC's regional office came through the lobby with a U.S. attorney and a folder of documents, and Dean was asked to come with them. And he did, because there was nothing else left to do. Vivian watched from the elevator bank as he crossed the marble, the repaired marble now, every grout line even, every layer beneath it finally what it had been certified to be. He didn't look at her on his way out. She thought about that for a long time afterward. A man who meets your eyes when he's done nothing wrong, and a man who can't when he has. It was, she thought, probably the most useful thing anyone had ever taught her without meaning to teach her anything at all. The board met the following morning. Vivian walked them through all of it. The Concord Ridge position, the Foss Whitlark filing, the arbitration clause, the pressure sensor, the whole structure laid out from the foundation up, the way you'd present a building. No editorializing, just documentation. "Do you have someone in mind for COO?" the board chair asked when she finished. "I have a name. I'll have a formal recommendation by end of week." On Eli's last scheduled day, he brought her the completion file. Every measurement, every date, every photograph, documentation clean enough that it would outlast the building it described. "It's safe now," he said. "Inspector signed off yesterday. There's a 6-month follow-up on the subfloor settlement, but structurally, it's sound." "Thank you," she said. Then, before he reached the door, "Eli." He stopped.
The firm needs a new head of facilities and infrastructure, someone who actually understands how buildings and systems fail before they fail. It's not a lateral move from where you are. I think it's the opposite direction. I have to be out by 3:15 most days for Ren. The role has flexibility built in, Vivian said. I understand the 3:15 constraint better than you'd think. He didn't ask how. She didn't explain. Some things didn't need explaining to be true. 6 weeks later, he started on a Monday. Ren came with him just for the morning and informed the reception desk, kindly but with total conviction, that they'd been mispronouncing Saturn for a week. Vivian heard it from her office and didn't quite smile. She was on a call with currency exposure with the Tokyo desk, and when the partner on the other end asked how things were going, she said, better than they were. It was a clean kind of true. It didn't need anything added to it.